Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leverage Your Nonprofit Profile to Achieve Fundraising Success this Giving Season. For those of you who are returning Candid webinar participants, a warm welcome back. And to those of you who are here for the first time, I'm so glad that you're joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Savella, and I'm a program specialist for Candid based in our New York Learning Center. I'm joined today by my colleagues Dorothy Ho and Kristen Kenner. Together, we'll be supporting today's webinar behind the scenes, administering polls, answering questions, and posing a few of those during our Q&A at the end of the presentation. I'd like to go over a few technical items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something similar on your screen. By default, you're listening in using your computer's audio. You'll also find a handout available for you today, which is a PDF of the presentation. You'll find that with the icon of the document on the side, and you can pose your questions and view the chat through the other two word bubbles that you'll find on the side. We do encourage you to ask your questions throughout the presentation as your lines are muted. We'll do our very best to get to as many of them as possible. We will also send out a follow-up email with a link to view recording of today's session, and it will link to the handout that I just mentioned. With that, I'd like to hand things over to my colleague, Eva Nico. Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Eva Nico, and I am Senior Director at Candid. I lead the work on the profile program, and we will be talking about the profiles today, specifically how it is that they fit into your preparation for giving season, how they can help you achieve more success with your fundraising. And to join me in that conversation and bring some reality to it, I welcome Rachel Wiley. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Eva. I'm excited to be here. Everyone, thank you for having me in this space. I'm really thrilled to be having this conversation with you. My name is Rachel Wiley, and I am the Executive Director for Pure Health Exchange Bay Area.
Wonderful. So Rachel is going to help us think through how it is that the profile can help you all in the coming giving season, because Pure Health Exchange is thinking about it themselves and going through very much the experience that you might be going through right now. So thank you, Rachel, for joining us. And so we'll start with just a couple of brief who is Pure Health Exchange, and then also who is Candid, and then we'll dive straight into what's giving season and how the profile fits in. So tell us a little bit more, Rachel, about Pure Health Exchange first.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So as you can see on the slide, our mission is to empower young people with the knowledge, skills, and resources to make healthy decisions. This is an organization that was founded because we recognize when we think about things in terms of health equity, that students who come from low-income families, who attend school in low-income communities, often do not have the same access to health resources that their more affluent counterparts do. Next slide, please. When I think also about Pure Health Exchange, I think the name tells a lot of the story about what it is that we do. And so I'll just break it down very quickly for you. I'll start with the second word. So health, as I said, our organization is focused on health equity and making sure that students have access to knowledge that they need to be able to make informed decisions about their health. The topics of focus for us are sexual health, mental health, and substance use. When we look at the first word, peer, I think this is actually one of the most special parts of what it is that our organization does. So we have a curriculum that we've built in-house. That curriculum is not delivered by staff members. It's actually delivered by college volunteers that we recruit, train, and then send into 9th grade classrooms as near peers to help translate this knowledge to students. And our goal and our hope is that because the students that we send, the college students, are near peers, our high school students who are in 9th grade may feel more inclined to be more honest with them about these sensitive topics, and may be able to build a more authentic relationship with them because they are close in age, but our college students are old enough to be credible. Last thing that I'll share, and this is more kind of hopefully a communication of credibility on my part. Like many of you, I'm sure, Pure Health Exchange has had to examine what it looks like to take our in-person program that was designed to be in close proximity and translate it to exist on a virtual platform. And so we've been leveraging TikTok, YouTube, various virtual platforms to be able to still reach students where they are, even when we can't be in their classrooms.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That's really helpful. So hopefully gives our audience a sense of who you are and who your organization is. So let's talk a little bit about Candid. For those of you who are not familiar with Candid, we came about when Foundation Center and GuideStar joined forces a bit over a year ago. And together, we bring over 88 years of expertise and millions of data points and information to the social sector about who is funding, what nonprofits activities are happening, and where that money comes from, where it goes, and why it matters. How do we do that? It's through research, collaboration, and training. We bring people who want to change the world together with the resources they need to do it. Speaking of resources, there are additional resources beyond this webinar. We have a wonderful online newsletter that you can access, as well as channels on Facebook and Twitter where we regularly share information. And all of you participants will have access to this PowerPoint after this webinar, so you don't need to be frantically noting these. You will have access to this content. We also want to note that this is not normal, the circumstances we're facing today. There are a number of global events happening around us that really surround us and inform how it is that we prepare for the coming months. And we want to just share with you again some additional resources, both around what's happening with COVID-19 funding, as well as with what's happening with racial equity. And there are two special websites that we've created to put a spotlight on those two issues and to continue to share current resources about them. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what we'll do together today. We will talk briefly about Giving Season for anyone who needs that context. We'll talk about the nonprofit profile and why it matters. We will talk with Rachel about how to help you prepare for success and share kind of 3 concrete steps that are very practical from this whole session that you can take in order to get ready. And then we will continue to share resources throughout the webinar and have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So let's get into it. 2020 Giving Season. First of all, Giving Season typically kicks off with Giving Tuesday, which this year will be on December 1st, 2020. And Giving Tuesday is an occasion for giving, for increasing generosity, and it follows after Thanksgiving and after some of the days that have more to do with shopping. And it really isn't intended as a response to that increased commercialization of this holiday, that we want to also bring a focus on not just buying, but also on sharing and on giving. And so it is an important day for many nonprofit organizations where a lot of particularly online digital campaigns hit the ground and continue through the end of the year, which is a very active time. And Giving Tuesday has grown in importance. It was launched in 2011, and as you can see, a significant amount of funding, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding has been mobilized as a result of this occasion. Clearly this year, we don't quite know what to expect, given all the context that I just mentioned, but we think it will be an important occasion for many nonprofits this year as well. So we encourage you all to get ready. And it's September, so we have plenty of time to do that, and want to give you some advice on how to do so. It's not just any giving season, of course. It is 2020, and many of us had big plans for this year that didn't come to fruition or really needed to change. And I wanted to actually take this occasion to ask you, Rachel, what is different for your organization this year, looking ahead to the giving season and Giving Tuesday?
Mm-hmm. And when you asked me to think about this question initially, Eva, I was like, how we don't have time to note all the things that feel like they're different. It feels like everything is different. I outlined 3 key things that I hope will resonate with the folks that are joining. We've had to move our, as I stated before, in-person program to a completely virtual platform, and that's presented a number of challenges. It's presented opportunities too, but it completely changes both the way that we do our work and also the way that we speak about our work. And necessitates some big shifts in both of those domains. We also, I think, on a positive front, have started this year, this fiscal year, with a lot more racial diversity in our staff teams, on our boards. And so that's a story that we want to tell more, that I think can support the efforts that we're trying to put in place looking toward this coming giving season. And then lastly, we've had to contend with the reality that we have donors who have multiple interests. And so we have folks that support PHE because they like what we do, and those same folks often are telling us, we still love what it is that you all do, but we also recognize between COVID, between the racial violence that's occurring, that there are more things that also need our support versus just pure health exchange. And so we're also finding that we have to acknowledge that our donors have more than one interest. And still stay relevant in their minds, even when we're not doing rapid response. We're not addressing rapid response efforts.
Thank you, Rachel. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. So let's talk a little bit about the nonprofit profile. We are, giving season obviously is about some exciting campaigns, but it is also about giving donors some resources that help grow their trust in the work of nonprofits and organizations. And we know from numerous, surveys and interviews and research efforts that a nonprofit's accomplishments are the #1 factor in establishing donor trust, following by their reputation and their finances. And the donors lose trust by worrying about greed and high compensation, fearing a negative reputation, and the lack of honesty and transparency by nonprofits. I believe that the nonprofit profile actually addresses multiple of these issues and dimensions. So let's talk a little bit about what it is. A nonprofit profiles are an online resource, a public resource for nonprofits and for donors and for foundations. And they can really be very poor in terms of the information that shows up, or they can help you grow trust by being very rich in the information that shows up. And while we at Candid leverage publicly available information that comes to us by virtue of the tax forms that you file with the IRS, there is a lot more to the profile that can be shown, that can demonstrate what it is that you as an organization are doing, what your financial situation is, who your leadership is, and also more information about the diversity of your organization. Some of these very questions that are being asked right now. So the way that we recognize organizations for sharing this additional information is with seals of transparency that you can actually use in your giving season marketing and campaigning. Earning a seal can be celebrated as an occasion, and you can let donors know that you've done so. So we have 4 seals. Bronze rewards organizations for sharing basic information, really enabling donors to even find you. The silver seal rewards organizations for sharing your financial information. And as you saw, financials are a key question for donors. How is the organization using resources? How large is the organization? Do they need my support? Those are some of the questions that donors ask. On the gold seal front, this is where you have an opportunity to say more about your goals, your strategies, your capabilities, and perhaps even a little bit about how you've shifted them during this time. So in platinum, finally, we get to this idea of accomplishments, and it is a way for you to share some of your indicators of progress and results. And one of my aims in this webinar will be to help you achieve these seals easily, to understand how you can leverage already existing materials that you have to do so. This is not meant to kind of reinvent the wheel. Many of you already have these materials and actively speak with your funders, with your board, with your volunteers about these issues. And I just want to make sure that there are others that see those materials online, particularly next giving season. I will say that a question that comes up very often is, is this something that I need to pay for? So I will just say upfront and clearly that participating in the profile and contributing information to the profile is free for nonprofits. We recognize that it takes your time, and time is precious, but in terms of, there is no fee for completing a profile. You will see that there are subscription fees and other things when it comes to heavy usage of this information. And really, we intend for people who are trying to use the information, they do sometimes have to subscribe in order to view more of it. But from a nonprofit's perspective, participation is free. We believe that it's important because it not only shows up on guidestar.org, but also with a number of partners and platforms that are increasingly active in giving, and I'll highlight those next. And we also think that it saves you some time. So in answering some of the questions that are part of the profile, some of the sections, it really helps you marshal some of the resources that you'll need to do some effective campaigning this giving season. I mentioned partners and the information not just showing up on GuideStar. So there is a large ecosystem of platforms, some of them very familiar, like Amazon Smile, Facebook. Others may be less familiar. For example, donor advised funds have their own experiences that they create in order to help their donors make choices around their giving. And there's a number of others that participate in facilitating giving. And the information that you share through your profile, some of it goes to these partners. So for example, with Amazon Smile, your mission statement, your program names, your current address, the name of your leader, they go to that little brief profile that Amazon allows people to use to designate who will get those donations. Other partners share even more information. For example, Charity Navigator, some of the gold and platinum information that's shared on the profile shows up with those partners. And then others, for example, the donor advised funds, they actually show their donors your profile on guidestar.org. So your full profile is searchable to those donors. And that's why I encourage everyone to make sure that that profile is up to date. Let's talk a little bit about, I mentioned Charity Navigator, so that's a very specific example. Let's talk a little bit about why it also matters specifically for Giving Tuesday. So we know based on information that we track through our website that there's a lot of activity throughout the year, but a significant spike in activity on Giving Tuesday in terms of people viewing the profiles. And that gives us a really concrete behavioral signal that says a donor, when they're thinking about a gift, they may be looking at multiple sources of information. They may be looking on Facebook initially, but then they might be clicking through to find out more about your organization using the profile on guidestar.org. So there's really a specific signal that says donors and people are looking, particularly at this time, and Giving Tuesday being an important peak. So let's talk a little bit about how we prepare for success, given that. I know, Rachel, that when I asked you to join this webinar, you said, well, our profile isn't quite up to date yet. And I thought, perfect, because that will give us a chance to show the folks joining us what it takes to get ready. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about, some of the questions that came up for you when we talked about the nonprofit profile and giving season.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eva. I love the title here because that is truly exactly the position that Peer Health Exchange is in. I need everybody listening to know that If you know the password to your GuideStar account, you're doing better than Rachel Wiley was, because I didn't even know the password. And so I hope that that helps you to feel a little calmer about the process and to feel like it's not too late for you, because it's not too late by any means. The first question that's listed here that I did have to ask and then talk to my larger team about at Peer Health Exchange is, why is this something that could be important to us? I had never seen our GuideStar profile, as ashamed as I am to admit that, and I hope the team forgives me. I had never seen it, I'd never accessed it, I've never played around in it. And it became very clear to me once I started to navigate it and started to get more familiar with what's listed on the profile, or what options you have for listing on the profile, that it not only provides basic information, and that's important, that someone can look at a glance, but it also, I think, allows you to give a lot of information in a very succinct, organized way. And I think you can have more faith that a donor that's coming to look at that page will get enough of an understanding about what it is that you do, versus the way in which we know oftentimes our donors will just visit the first page of our website and not click through, and they don't really have a comprehensive understanding about what we do as an organization. And so those are the things that occurred to me when I started to familiarize myself, that this is a beautiful snapshot that can be used to have conversations more widely with folks. The second question around who has access was also a funny conversation, because it took about a week, if I'm just being very honest. The team asked me to be honest. It took about a week to understand who was actually in charge of the profile. So I sent out an email to all the people on the team who it might be, and everybody was like, I don't know. And so that left me at an interesting dead end. I had to figure out who else I hadn't spoken to. But it did take about a week to get the answer. Once we did get the answer, then we were able to go in and start to really think about what needs to be updated. So a good example that's probably difficult for you all to see, but if you look under Peer Health Exchange and underneath Empowering Young People to our location, we're no longer located in San Francisco, and that's an important part of our story. There was a really conscious decision that we made to move our office from San Francisco to Oakland, because the vast majority of the students that we serve from my team exist in Oakland. That's part of our story that we want to have reflected, and so we need to do some work to update this profile. It also opened up a really beautiful and overdue conversation around, how do we use this globally as a team to share information with external audiences, and how do we make sure that we're not missing opportunities to share that information, which we currently are, because it's not updated. And so I would encourage you to have those same conversations with your team, and allow that to open up a conversation about what opportunities are being missed if we're not putting this information out in front. Last thing for us, we've shared basic information. As you can see, our mission is up there, our CEO's name, our tax ID number. That's good, that's helpful. And there's a lot of substance that's missing that we realized, again, these missed opportunities. So things that I'm excited to talk with my team about making sure are updated on this profile are what we aim to solve. This is going to change for all the reasons that I talked to you all about a couple minutes ago. What has been the case for us, the problem that we've been working to solve still remains, but it has shifted and it does look different. We have new challenges that we have to solve for. How beautiful to be able to have a page to send donors to and supporters to that tells that story right away, where they don't have to wade through our website, or we don't have to wait for our marketing team, as much as we love them, to be able to update the website. We can do this in real time and get that information quickly. The last two things that I'm excited to work with our team to update, there's a section about our programs. Naturally, our programs also look different. I want folks to be able to come to our page and see very clearly and easily what is different, what type of program are we running. And then lastly, we have, as I shared in the beginning, we put a lot of effort into making sure that we have more racially diverse staff teams, boards, et cetera. There's a space to tell that story and to share that data that we're really proud of. We're missing an opportunity if we're not taking advantage of the framework that GuideStar provides for us to be able to tell that story up front to donors.
Wonderful, Rachel. Well, let's walk through a little bit of the how-to, because I want to make sure that for many other folks, maybe it won't take a week to figure out how to get into the profile. So let's talk briefly about that, and then we'll actually ask you, the audience, our question. So without further ado, it is obviously, if you go to your profile and look at it for your own organization, you may see a little seal by it. Maybe it's an older seal of transparency, or maybe your profile looks really bare. So what I would encourage you to do is to request access to manage your profile. And we call this process claiming. Essentially, we want to make sure that whoever is a representative of the organization, part of the organization, those are the folks that can update the information, and we don't want others to be changing the information for your organization. So there is a process to go through. First, that you have to request access to the profile. Next, you have to get approved in order to manage it, and then obviously you can update the information, and we'll show you some quick hints and tips for how to navigate that experience easily. So that is what I would encourage you to do. And the first thing to do is actually to sign in, to create an account or sign in on GuideStar. That right away helps us understand who you are, and it makes it easier then for you to claim your profile. Next, there is a page, and you will see right up here, update nonprofit profile. When you're signed in and you click there, if you already have access to your organization's profile, it should just be listed. If you don't, you will see this page that says update your GuideStar nonprofit profile, get started now, with a lovely yellow button. So that is really where you click in order to begin that claiming process that I just described. We will ask you a few questions to help identify yourself. I will say that if you have a work email that includes the domain of your organization, that will fast track the claiming process, and it means that you can get approved more quickly. If you're using a Gmail account or a more personal account, no problem, but it will take probably a couple of days for you to get approved. Again, we're just trying to make sure that we are doing our best to protect the integrity of your profile. So before we jump into the how-to of the updating experience, I'd love to turn to you all and ask my colleague Elizabeth to launch a poll. Oh, I see the poll is open. And the poll really is going to help me guide how we spend our next 15 minutes. Where can we help you the most? Is it in some of that basic information that's contained in bronze, in financials, updating those in silver? Is it thinking through your strategy and goals in gold, or the metrics in platinum? Rachel also mentioned that there's a place to share information about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, so we could talk about that. Or is it something else, in which case feel free to chat that, and my colleagues will maybe give me a signal. But I will ask Elizabeth to open the poll and ask you all to participate and indicate where you think we should spend our time. I'll give that a moment to play out.
All right, we are inching up to about 50% participation, so I'll give everyone another moment to make their selection and then click that submit button. And as Eva suggested, if you need help in a different area, please go ahead and let us know through that questions chat portion, and we'll do our best to support you and flag Eva if needed. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. We do have a pretty even spread, but it looks that about 60% of the room really want to hear about gold and platinum, with each of those getting about 30% each.
Wonderful. Well, we will definitely give a quick tour and overview of the whole experience, but we might spend a bit more time on gold, platinum, particularly given the feedback from the audience. Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you all for participating. Let's talk. Let's get into it. So I will actually navigate to the live demo portion of our presentation. So I mentioned to you all that the profile is obviously what the public sees about your organization, but once you claim your profile, you will have access to this section, which is for your organization to share the information that you want to share and then to publish it to your public profile. So it works a little bit like with blogs, where you first create the content and edit it, And then you can publish it so that it appears publicly on your profile. That's kind of an analogous experience. I will say that when I first was helping update our profile, a number of years ago on GuideStar, this felt a little bit nerve-wracking, this publishing experience, right? Like, what should I say here? If I publish it, what will people think? And I will say that over time, I have calmed down a little bit, right? You may be annually updating or even more frequently updating your profile. It's okay to change your mind given even the circumstances that have changed for your organization. And so it's okay to come back and update and publish again. Nothing stops you from kind of overwriting the information and keeping it up to date. So I will say, when you first come in and you are all getting a kind of first look at our updated, rebranded experience, so you will see our Candid branding throughout this section, you will be welcomed, update nonprofit profile. It will show whether your organization currently has a seal of transparency or not. And I'm showing the information for Peer Health Exchange. So as Rachel confessed, their organization is still in the process of thinking through its updates and currently has a 2018 silver seal and is thinking about how to update to the current year standard. You will also see a very helpful section that essentially shows you that you can also, once you've claimed your profile, you can assign additional profile managers into it. So if you have colleagues helping you through this experience, providing different pieces of information, you can actually invite them from within this experience to do so. So you can provide their email address, they will get an email that asks them to accept the invitation, and then they will have access to the updating experience themselves. So I encourage you to invite your colleagues to do that with you. I will then quickly show you an overview of how the updating experience is organized. So on the update page, you will see an overview of the seals of transparency and the subsections of information that belong with each seal. And then you will also see some of the optional sections that we have for sharing social media and photos, sharing demographics, more about your practices, and some additional documents if you are inclined to share them. And so this update page gives you a nice overview of the kind of key information in the sections, and you can navigate to each sections from within them. And the little check mark let you know what has been completed and what has not been completed. So you can see that at a glance. And then once you're done updating, you will move through to the publish page. So I mentioned that blog component where you represent that the information that you're sharing is true and honest. And then you can also manage some permissions in order to include a donate button on for your organization on the profile, or not to include it. And then there will be a button to publish. Finally, once you complete updating, you might see the benefits page, which tells you a little bit about, gives you the materials that you can use in some of your marketing. For example, access to the seal, which you can also put on your website, and then other tools and resources. So let's go a little bit into that updating experience. I know, Rachel, when you were first saying this, the first thing you noticed is that your address, wasn't even correct or reflected. So I will just show folks, yep, there is a place when you click on that section, what's your organization's name? Are you known by other names? Who's the primary contact? Who's the fundraising contact? What is the main address for your organization? So these are some of the basics that allow you to kind of indicate who you are and where you're operating. I will ask Rachel, when you thought about that kind of that basic level information, you also mentioned programs. How is it that you're thinking about kind of updates to those programs at the moment?
Good question, and something that we're still in the process of identifying. Everything is very much up in the air. I think that the way that we can use the GuideStar profile in a really fantastic way is by first of all, we can update it a lot more easily and a lot more readily. than we might if we were making updates to our website. And so part of what I envision is, we expect impact to change. We're learning every day about the impact of this brand new program. And so I think it allows us to be able to give more regular updates and say, so for this month, this is the impact that we saw. For this quarter, this is the impact that we saw, and make sure that we're actually regularly updating that information so that we're asking our community of support to kind of come with us on this journey as we learn about what our impact is, as we try new things.
Thank you, Rachel. That makes sense. And I will say that for our audience, obviously address, name of executive director, like these things sort of come quickly, right? They're just established facts. But when you're thinking about your programs, and this is a place where you might be able to also note a change to your programs, given what's happening this year in 2020, that you might say, as a result of the current COVID-19 pandemic, we have moved all our programming online or have engaged with our volunteers in a different way. And this is a place in the description that you could note that. So I'm just demonstrating also for the audience that when we ask about a program, we ask for the name, a brief description, who is the target population that you're focusing on from the program. If you have one, there is a little bit of an experience here where analogous maybe to Google Maps, where you indicate where the work happens. And that's something that's important often for donors to understand, where is it that the work is happening. So that's kind of that experience of updating the program information. So let me actually move through to the silver section as well. So in silver, we're really talking about some financial information. And there are two ways to update the silver section. You can, if you're a larger organization, you might have an updated or an audited financial statement that should be from your last fiscal year, completed fiscal year. And so you can add that statement, and that completes silver in essentially one step. And that statement becomes available through the profile. If you are a younger organization or a smaller organization, you may not have an audited financial statement. And so we ask you to indicate, what is the year that you're reporting for, and then we ask you to share some of the key information that you should have in terms of your contributions, which are required, in terms of total revenue, which is required. You will see that some of the information is labeled with a little star, and that means it's required to earn the seal. And then other information is we ask as an option. So if you want to present a fuller picture of your organization, you can share that optional information. And then similarly for expenses, as well as for liabilities, and then optionally sharing some of your funding sources. So that is essentially silver in a nutshell. And if you have your kind of latest report to the board on your financials, that is a good place to start in terms of updating this section. And then let's talk a little bit about gold and platinum, given that this is where folks really wanted to get a bit of advice. So as Rachel mentioned, one of the first questions is actually, what is the need or issue that your organization is working to address? So there is a brief summary that we ask for here. And then we ask 5 basic questions. What is your organization aiming to accomplish? What are your strategies for making this happen? What are your capabilities, which may have changed in 2020? How will your organization know that you're making progress? And then what have you accomplished so far, and what's next? And this may look a little bit intimidating because you see these big blank boxes and you see a 3,000 character limit. And what I would encourage you to do is to, again, look at your current strategic plan, or your latest grant application, or your latest report to the board, and really think about summarizing some of that information in a short paragraph. So I think there's a tendency for folks to feel like they really need to say a lot in these questions, which can be a barrier. But on the side of the donor, they're really scanning your profile for this information, and they may read a paragraph, but they will probably not read 5 paragraphs about your individual organization. So it really is less is more here, and a short paragraph that you're already kind of synthesizing, maybe sharing even on your website, can help address these questions more succinctly. And then Rachel, for your organization, was there a particular question that stood out to you as something that you wanted to flesh out or change for your organization?
Not change. I really love all of the questions, and I think they are very supportive in helping, those of us who really feel passionately about the work and have all the things to say about it. I think it supports us to make sure we remain succinct. I think the key question that I really want to spend some time with thinking, all of them I'll talk with my team about and get input, of course, but the key question is that last one, I believe, around how will you know that you've been successful, in this moment where we are still defining success and we're still designing what our program looks like. It's really difficult for us to say from this moment, this is what success looks like. And so I'm excited about that question because it's going to push us to really establish a vision, even if that doesn't come to full fruition, establish a vision for what we think success can look like, given the shifts that we've made.
Makes sense. And then I will talk for a moment about the platinum section as well, because it's related to that idea of thinking about success and sharing information about that. So within the platinum experience, if you've not updated it in the past, you will come in on this screen that essentially says there are 3 steps to platinum. First, identifying the measures or metrics that you want to share, then actually selecting those and providing the indicator, and then publishing those to your profile. So as you come into platinum, you will have an overview of that experience. And then there are a couple of ways for you to actually find metrics that may already exist within the system that help reflect your organization. So you can use a search tool that we have in the experience to provide that access, or you will be able to look at a PDF. I see that the website is continuing to load here. That will provide a PDF of some of the metrics that are accessible to you from within this experience. So I will give this one more moment, and if it doesn't load, I will come back to it. Looks like it's still thinking, so perhaps I will instead look at the PDF so that that's a little bit quicker. So there is a common results catalog that we use that we share in order that you are not faced just with a blank slate of metrics. So essentially, almost 12,000 organizations have shared indicators of progress and results already and been recognized with a platinum seal. And based on that, we are sharing some of the frequently shared metrics that they report on. So if you're in advocacy policy organizations, there are ones already loaded in the system that you can choose from that maybe already you're tracking and match your organization. And then there are, some general metrics, for example, number of people served. And then there are others for training, or assistance, if that's what your organization provides. So there is already a catalog of over 600 metrics that you can see before you decide, what makes sense for your organization. And then within the experience, there's also a way for you to share a custom metric. So you're not forced to choose one of these. If something in here doesn't match or doesn't make sense, you can also share something that you can create essentially a custom metric for your organization. So I will say that this is again another somewhat intimidating section because it means, but the advice I will give is you are likely already tracking a few things that are important to you. So that is a good place to start. For us at Candid, for example, we track how many organizations have seals of transparency, and that's something we share on our profile, or how many people come to the website, and that is something that we share on the profile. So I will say that this can be a great tool for you to think through what you should track in the future, but you can also say, what is it that we're tracking already that is important for our donors to know, and use this tool to reflect that. And then I will end on a kind of the demo on the final note that it is, for your information to actually show up on the profile, you do need to publish it. So you can draft it inside of this experience, but in order for it to show up on your profile, you need to obviously certify that it's true, that you represent the organization, that you accept the terms of use for the profile, and then you can decide if you're going to share your information through GuideStar's partners. So we mentioned all those partners that are important in giving, so I encourage you to flip that to on, as well as whether you're going to add a donate button and then you publish the information, which I won't do for Peer Health Exchange, but you publish the information in order for it to show up. And it probably will take between 5 to 15 minutes for the profile to fully update. So if you don't see that information instantly, give it a few minutes and then it should show up within that time frame. That's, I think, it for the kind of the demo experience, and I will come back to the presentation for a minute and just summarize kind of the tactical preparation lessons that we were just talking about. So I mentioned, don't forget to publish. We just talked about that. There are resources. There's a little chat, smiley chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen when you come in on GuideStar, and that is our help center, where there's a lot of helpful resources for how to do some of the things we just talked about. And then let's come back a little bit to the Giving Tuesday context, given what we just said. So how does this profile really help you get ready for Giving Tuesday? Clearly, this is a time where donors are looking, as I mentioned, so it helps you in giving them a snapshot that they can readily absorb about your organization. We recognize that it's not business as usual. There's a greater need in our communities. Many nonprofits are struggling with their operations, and there are fewer fundraising events, in person certainly, that allow you to access those funding resources. So a lot more giving and a lot more research is happening online. And we believe that that means that organizations do need to adapt. They need to embrace your online presence, and the nonprofit profile is already a part of that. There are ways that you can demonstrate your diversity as an organization. So there are questions that ask you to share information about your leader, your staff, and your board if you collect that information. And then there are best practice options within the profile to say you don't collect it, if that's what the case for you. And then we believe that in looking through the aspects of this profile, it helps you gather some of these materials that you will need for your giving season campaigns to effectively communicate. And with that, I will just ask Rachel for kind of her final thoughts on, the tactical, how is it that you are getting ready for giving season this year? You've already mentioned, 3 important ways that you're thinking through that. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to help our audience?
I'll just give one thought that I have related to your point around having fewer in-person fundraising events. We're all very used to having people in close proximity to us and building community in that way. And I think this moment is challenging us to really think about whether or not that's the only way that we can build community. And so that second point that I have here, my team is really thinking long and hard about how do we create innovative virtual spaces that still achieve that, that community feel. And a lot of what has been successful for us, just as something to think about, is asking our donor base, people who are closest to us, when there's this moment where there's so much competition for virtual time, what would make you attend an event that PHE was putting on virtually? And we've gotten a lot of really great feedback. And so we're thinking about that as a key stewardship opportunity for us to create not just more donors and more opportunities for folks to give, but to really create a community of support around the work that Peer Health Exchange does.
Wonderful, Rachel. And I loved it. I remember you sharing this last point also, that 2020 not being a normal year, there may be some plans that didn't come to fruition, but what you might want to focus on is essentially highlighting the things that are happening, right? That
Exactly.
you do know are happening, rather than thinking about some of the plans that may have been missed. And I thought that was a great point to make. So for our audience, I will share kind of a simple 1 to 3, tactical from this conversation. I will encourage you, number one, just to check out, review your own profile on guidestar.org. What does it look like right now? Does it have a seal? Is it a current year seal or not? I will encourage you to claim and get access by clicking that update nonprofit profile link and going through that process. And then secondarily, I would encourage you to, again, leverage information you already have on hand to share on your profile. And as Rachel has wonderfully talked us through, maybe prioritize what you want to change or share about your organization. Is it the program info? Is it the metrics that need an update? Is it just the basic address? You don't have to tackle it all at once. There is a kind of progression that you can step through to get moving in time for giving season. So those are my kind of quick tips, and I would love to see if there are some questions that have come in from our attendants.
Hi, Eva and Rachel. Thank you so much for taking us through that presentation. Of course, we have plenty of questions to get to. We'll do our very best to get to as many of them as possible. But I wanted to actually start on the question of boards and diversity. Bonnie is sharing that there is a lot of emphasis on diversity right now, especially in the nonprofit sector. But turnover on boards can happen very slowly. So how would you actually reflect that nuance on your GuideStar nonprofit profile?
That's a great question, and thank you, Bonnie, for that. I think so. The demographic section on GuideStar is in essentially 2 parts. One, it is asking you to reflect the composition of your staff and board as it is. And as I mentioned, there are separate questions for your leader as an individual, for your staff overall, your senior staff, as well as the board members. And so that is asking a little bit about the status quo in terms of the race and ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability status, again, with best practice options if you don't have those answers. And then there's a second component to that section that is highlighting some equity strategies, so ways to make progress, right? And it's asking about your practice. So for example, are you considering thoughtfully the composition of your board? Are you doing an analysis of compensation and equity on your staff? Are you just disaggregating data based on some of these characteristics to understand how your program may be affecting the people that you serve? So what I would encourage Bonnie and others to do is to reflect the status quo, and then to also participate in some of the equity strategies questions that really demonstrate that there is an intention to make progress, to be thoughtful about this issue. I will also say that the diversity that you show obviously depends on the context of your community and the people that you serve. I think the fundamental question is often, are you inclusive, and are you representing the people that you intend to serve in your composition as an organization? And so I think there is that contextual piece as well.
Great, thank you for that. We have a couple folks asking how often they should update their profile. We do have seals for different years. So what's the oldest seal that's currently reflected on GuideStar? And then kind of what's the recommendation, and how often should we refresh that?
It's a good question. I'll say, if you go to a restaurant and they have a Yelp rating from, I don't know, 2015, you're like, that's been a while, right? So my feeling is it's important to come up to the current year standard, to be, to show that your information is current, because that's also a signal, when your donor is looking at that seal or that information, they know it comes from the most recent kind of applicable year. So I would encourage folks to update to the 2020 seal. They do actually look a little bit different than the previous year seals, given our organization has changed the look and feel of the profile, and it's an important signal of kind of freshness. I will also say that we're not expecting folks to live daily in their profile, right? That this is, if the information is changing, for example, if your address has changed or your board composition has changed or your program has changed in a significant way, then we do want folks to keep up to date with that. But we see, most organizations definitely updating annually, because again, some of those major changes and getting onto the new standard. And then we do see a spike in activity, particularly September, October, November, ahead of giving season, when folks are really getting ready and know that there will be people coming to see what's on the profile. And so we do see some more frequent activity. Often there's a flurry, right? If you first get access and you see lots of updates, there's a flurry of activity that's happening over a period of a couple of weeks when those updates are happening.
Great, thank you for that. And then there's a couple of folks asking about our partners here, both Facebook, yourcause.org, Benevity, etc. I believe each partnership is a little bit different with some nuances, but what is typically the information that's going to each of those partners, and how much control do nonprofits have about what's reflected, let's say, on their Facebook profile, based on what they're putting into their GuideStar profile?
Right. So I think it's exactly right, Elizabeth, that there's not necessarily a single answer for each partner, but partners do tend to, the first order is the basic information, right? So they need to make sure that the name of the organization is correct, the address. There's a set of fields that's for your fundraising contact or the address where you can receive donations. So many of our partners, particularly the ones that are involved in the payments process, do use that information for, where does the check go, where does the money need to go. And they often use the basic information, the mission statement, the logo. So many of these experiences are also increasingly on mobile, right? So you're not looking at a giant profile on mobile. You're really looking at the logo, the mission statement. Maybe there's a tagline for the mission that quickly gives a snapshot of an organization. So that is probably the set of information that goes to most partners. And then there are a number that then take it deeper. I mentioned Charity Navigator. So within Facebook, I think it's mostly the mission statement. And then the rest of your Facebook page obviously is a lot of the content that you're creating, there. So it's really that foundational info.
Fantastic. And then I think our final question here, just because we're running short on time, is really about the forms that people are submitting. We've had quite a few questions around 990s, audited financials. Do they need to provide a copy of their 1023? Perhaps their files are too big. So where can they get help on figuring out which files they need to provide and what sizes and formats?
Oh boy, these are some conscientious folks here. So what I'll say is, I showed that update page within the nonprofit profile that kind of listed the sections with the little check marks. That's probably the best page to use to navigate, kind of what kind of forms can be uploaded, what's required, what's optional. A lot of the forms, the 990s, 1023 EZs, those are in the additional document section, and you can kind of click through to that section and see what the, I think the file size requirements are generally pretty generous. I think it's 20 megabytes per file, and hopefully it's a PDF file that you're uploading. So there is, the file size requirements are usually noted in each of the sections. And many, some of these forms, as I mentioned, audited financials are a way to achieve silver. Some of the other forms are more optional. And there is the help center. So if you're feeling like lost within the experience, there is a little smiley chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that during working hours, there are real people answering questions, and there are also access to resources that kind of walk through each part of the profile and kind of help you answer some of these questions.
Absolutely. Our support team is fantastic. So definitely reach out to them if you're getting stuck at any point in time. Thank you so much for your time, Rachel. Thank you for taking us through all of the technical aspects here, Eva. I do just want to remind folks that we are recording this session, so they will get a link to the recording in the follow-up email. That follow-up email will also include a link to today's presentation. So any of the hyperlinks that you saw throughout, you'll have access to all of those. We'll also include a couple helpful resources. And of course, we have some fantastic reminders here for folks as we get to giving season. Did you want to speak to these, Eva?
Sure. So it's September 9th now. It's not too late. You've gotten sort of a jump on how to do this and hopefully feel more comfortable navigating this experience. I will say that I encourage folks to update their profile 2 weeks ahead of Giving Tuesday. So that's November 17th this year, to make sure that there is enough time for all of that information to then make its way through and get passed on to our partners. As I mentioned, it will show up on your profile within 15 minutes, but every single partner has their own cadence for the updates that they do. So I'm trying to give folks enough time to make their updates so that they show up in time for Giving Tuesday, which is actually, I think, December 1st this year. So I'll have to correct that on the slide, but December 1st this year. So 2 weeks ahead, November 17th is when you should finish with your updates.
Fantastic. And we're always learning here at Candid. So if you did want to join us for a virtual workshop on finding new donors, we'll have that coming up at the end of September. And then we will be talking about how to put racial equity and youth empowerment at the forefront of your Giving Tuesday campaign later this month as well. So with that, thank you, everyone. We really hope that you enjoyed this webinar. If you did, we do hope that you join us again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.